A very warm welcome to today's lecture. This is Dr. Manisha Mirdha and we would be continuing with the topic Political Processes in India Developmental Part 2. So in the first part we tried to understand mostly the concept of federalism and the provisions of federation in our country. In today's lecture, let us first begin with the meaning of developmental and then move on further. Now, originating from the French word developer, which was adapted into English to mean the faculties of human mind, the English word develop gradually came to express the notion of progressive development. Development acquires certain distinctiveness across a range of political contexts as it is based on a process of change which can be understood as growth, progress and modernization, which cannot take place without the presence and intervention of certain political factors critical to our social dynamics. The political factors present certain broad challenges to the process of development. So, the concept of development naturally includes within it the idea of growth, progress, modernization, plus development as a concept, especially in a state, cannot function without the intervention of the political factors. They go hand in hand. And development acquired further features after the term underdeveloped came into use in 1945. So, post World War II, when the concept of underdevelopment or what they otherwise call the third world countries came into perspective, the idea of development came more clearly out. So, we had the first world countries, the third world countries, or what was also otherwise known as the North and the South gap. The concept of development came more clearly out into perspective. Now, development in independent India and the basic ingredients of that would be developing India after the end of British rule was a process of new beginning. For the first time, the concept of India as a single nation was provoked, as in contrast to India as a conglomeration of different royal states. Critical in this nationalist notion was the presence of some factors. Now, we also know that prior to our independence, we were a combination of princely states and British provinces. We were, as they say, a conglomeration of different fragmented parts. It was only after independence that we came out as one single nation, and the factors which ensure presence of development in our country were something like the scientific and technological developments, the dynamic of inherited social institutions, cultural values of the society, socio-economic and political changes with the adoption of the democratic process, which saw the operation of electoral process and the party system. Today's program seeks to introduce some very important political processes. As in a democratic political system, political parties are very crucial. They are very important institutions. They are devices through which people participate in political processes. Political parties mobilize people on the issues which concern them. People elect their representatives to the legislative bodies as candidates of political parties. There are various political parties in India, which we will also be speaking about in the coming slides. They represent various ideologies, various issues, leaderships, policies, programs, social groups, regions, etc. And based on the extent of the influence in the state or at all India levels, political parties can be identified as national parties, state or regional parties, or even registered parties. And on the basis of their numbers in India or in the states, they can be viewed as party systems such as one party system, two party system or multi-party system. So, this is just the introduction of the concept of political party. In the coming slides, we will try to gain a further understanding of the meanings of these terms like one party system, bi-party system and multi-party system. Political party forms an important component of a political system, and especially in the developmental processes of India, political party plays a very important role. A political party is an institution which consists of leaders, policies, programs, etc. And the members might have formal membership or may support it without being formal members also. So, most of us might not be belonging to any particular political parties, but we still endorse the ideologies of certain political parties. And parties can be differentiated on various factors. A similar aligned concept is of interest groups or pressure groups also. But there is a difference between political parties and interest groups. Political parties are those parties which actually contest election, which actually contest for power. The interest groups and the pressure groups do not contest elections. Though they play a very strong role and influence in the governance of the country, they do not contest elections. They are influential in politics, however, they do not have their own clear agents, if I could call them, in the representative structure of the governance. The principal feature of a political party which distinguishes it from other organizations is that its main purpose is to capture power. Unlike a political party, a pressure group, interest group or non-party civil society organization generally do not seek power. Political parties are the important links between individuals, state and society. Political parties provide the crucial connection between social process and policy makers and influence debates and policies on issues affecting the interests of the various social groups in a political system. So, a strong political party and a strong opposing political party is a very clear indication of a strong democracy also. Based on the numbers of parties present in a political system, party systems generally can be categorized as single party, two party, multi-party systems. And as the name suggests, the single party, two party or multi-party systems denote the presence of single, two or several parties in a democracy. If I had to give an example, see, mostly countries are multi-party, but the way they function have characterized them as a single party system or a bi-party system or a multi-party system. So, for example, if we talk about China, so China, we have the Chinese Communist Party, which is almost functioning as a single party system. Or if we talk about US, where they have these two parties, which are the Democrats and the Republics. So, US also functions mostly as a bi-party system with the Democrats and the Republican party system. You have the UK, where you have these two parties, the Conservative and the Labour parties, and it also functions mostly like a bi-party system. So, a good example of single party could be China, Russia. A good example of bi-party could be US, UK, and India becomes a good party of a multi-party system. Examples will be taken on later. If we talk about the nature of party system in India and especially about the first 2 decades after independence, and if I quote Rajni Kothari, who is a stalwart in this area, has argued in his work Politics in India, that party system evolved from an identifiable political center. This political center, carved during the nationalist movement, was comprising of the political elite sharing a common socio-economic background. They were mostly educated, urban, upper caste people belonging mostly to a horizontal slice of classes. The common social background of this resulted in the homogeneity that became a defining feature of the political center as well as of the party system. The ruling party and the opposition, both coming from the same social background, shared social perceptions and actually converged on many issues. A consensus therefore existed within the system and outside the system also regarding the basic values. The Indian National Congress was the institutional manifestation of this political center. Actually, there are two views regarding this one party dominance which existed in the first 2 decades after independence. Some have alleged the Constituent Assembly to be highly dominated by the Congress, the assembly highly dominated by the Hindu majority, the assembly highly dominated by a kind of a legal luminaries also. However, the justification is that even if it was Congress dominated, it was represented by all the sections of the people, all societies, and there was a clear debate, discussion modus that they operated, and they decided that they will not even go for a majority vote, because if we decide to go for a majority vote, it inherently entails a minority view. So therefore, they decided that they could not afford to have a minority view, rather they would go for decision making by consensus. So even if it was a single party dominance, they tried to ensure that all the views were taken into consideration. And again, the other view says that it was a very strategic move on the part of the Congress to curb and dissuade dissent. So these two narratives go side in side when they try to justify the single party dominance during the first 2 decades after independence. The party system during the 2 decades and after independence, which was termed as single dominant party system, was still a multi-party system. The ruling party though played a very dominant role, because we did have other parties. Congress was not the only party, though a very dominant one. Other number of parties existed and operated politically. However, the central space of politics was occupied by Indian National Congress. The dominance of the Congress was determined by its immense organizational strength as well as its capability to capture number of seats both in Union Parliament and the state legislatures. So, yes, though it was a single party dominance, and plus during the elections of the Constituent Assembly itself, the Congress already had a majority of 69%, and when there was partition and there was no longer the Muslim League a part of it, this inbuilt majority rose to the extent of 82%. So the Constituent Assembly had the members from Indian National Congress to that extent. So that kind of dominance of Congress was bound to be there in the Assembly. Change in the nature of the party system in the coming decades, especially after 1960s, was because of the change socio-economic and demographic profile of the polity. Such a change in the profile of the polity was a consequence of the political mobilization of the masses as well as the emergence of new political classes. As we were progressing, the single party dominance was being challenged, especially at some of the states, Kerala being one of them, and regional parties were coming more into dominance. 1967 elections were a reflection of that also. The political mobilization of the masses was a logical consequence of the electoral politics based upon the principle of universal adult franchisee. Since we had adopted the process of universal adult franchisee, the true depiction of the popular will was coming out. Frequently held elections also helped in increasing the political consciousness of the masses of India, especially those belonging to the backward classes. So, gradually this single party dominance was being challenged to begin with in some of the states. The nature of the Indian polity as well as the party system after 1967 went a substantial change. This change has been described in varied terms. This was the beginning of the decline of the dominant party system. Morris Jones has attributed this to the emergence of a market polity, in which a number of opposition parties were brought fully into the marketplace, and competition that had previously occurred within the Congress was now brought into the realm of inter-party conflict. Now, because of the growing political consciousness and the number of elections and the development which was taking place, a lot of other competition was thriving. We were actually emerging as a true multi-party system. We had been a multi-party system since the beginning, but there was a strong single party dominance. But post 1967, the emergence of regional parties ensured that we moved towards a multi-party system, and a number of new political forces and formations started emerging, making electoral politics more competitive. All this led gradually to the decline of Congress. It was in this period, starting with 1989 now, parliamentary elections, that Congress was displaced from its position of centrality. Such displacement of Congress from the position of the centre has various implications. Congress ceased to be the dominant political party. It was no more the single major political party that dominated the political scenario. So, as I said, 1967 the descent had started, but it was only finally 1977 elections that for the first time in the centre Congress was defeated and Janata Party came into governance. And after that, from 1989, the concept of coalition politics actually started, and the hegemony of Congress was constantly being challenged. Now, if we come to the contemporary party system, the party system as it is operating at present is based upon multiplicity of political parties, and as said before, since 1989 there has been definitely an increase in the number of political parties entering the political arena. The kind of party system that is available at present is not hegemonic but competitive, with sufficient scope for alteration. So, single party dominance was challenged and multi-party system came into existence. The compulsion of the electoral mathematics and the requirement of coalition governments have resulted in the politics of alliance. Alliance takes place amongst a number of political parties that comes together for contesting elections and forming the government. So, the example could be like NDA, UPA, these are all alliances which have different political parties coming together to form a single party and contest elections. The competitive political space has been widened with greater number of political parties having a bearing on power politics. Rather than one party hegemonizing or even 2 or 3 parties making serious claims on political power, there are a number of political parties which have entered the political arena. Acceptance of a common program among the alliances does not necessarily mean that the alliance partners share common ideology. So, when these political parties form their own coalition, when they form their own alliances, it is mostly for political purposes. It is not that there has been some association of the political ideology or the political manifesto. It is mostly towards the electoral purposes. Ideological cohesiveness does not characterize the nature of these alliances. Ideological position of the parties that came forward to join an alliance at times is quite paradoxical in fact. So, it is quite difficult to understand what causes these ideological dissimilar parties to form an alliance, and this is the logic of political power, where 2 very dissenting parties come together and form an alliance just to give competition to the opposition. The contemporary party system is a reflection of the complexities and heterogeneity that prevails with Indian society. It is a representation of the diversity of political interests and opinions. It also reflects the wider reach of the participatory politics that has politicized diverse groups and articulated their political voice. This extensive nature of politicization has resulted in a very accommodative nature of party politics. The party politics is no longer dominated by any one party. In fact, there is sufficient importance for smaller parties too. And when this multi-party system emerges, it directly influences the political processes of the country, because a different kind of federal spirit, a different kind of federal context vis-a-vis the party system emerges in the country. Today, India has a multi-party system. The Election Commission of India accords national level and state level political parties based on certain objective criteria. So, the power to designate a political party, the designation of a national political party or a state political party is something which is conferred to the Election Commission of India. A recognized political party enjoys privileges like reserved party symbols, free broadcast time on television, radio, etc., consultation in the setting of election dates, and giving inputs in setting electoral rules and regulations. Political parties can be of two kinds, recognized and unrecognized. The recognized political parties have their claim over the political party symbols and the other benefits which I just now spoke of. The unrecognized political parties do not have all of these benefits. Other political parties that wish to contest elections, be it local, state or national, are required to be registered by the Election Commission of India. So, it is very important that all the political parties, whether recognized or unrecognized, are registered with the Election Commission of India. It is the final right of the Election Commission of India to declare a party to be a recognized political party, an unrecognized political party, a registered recognized political party, and likewise. Registered parties are upgraded as recognized national parties or state parties by the ECI again if they meet the relevant criteria after the elections, which could be again Lok Sabha for the national parties and the Legislative Assembly elections for the state parties. The recognized party status is reviewed periodically by the ECI. So, this also has to be kept in mind that it is not that once a party has been declared to be a national party or a state party, it is there forever. It is not so. There are certain criteria which are set by the Election Commission which ensures whether the party still enjoys the right of a national party, a state party, or none of the above. So, therefore, there is a proper mandate for all of this. One change which came in 2016 was that if a political party failed to fulfill the criteria of the subsequent Lok Sabha or state legislative elections, they lost their status as a recognized party. In 2016, the ECI announced that such a review would take place only after 2 consecutive elections instead of every election. Now, what this means is that there are certain parameters that we will again be speaking of which clearly define a party to be a national party or a state party, or whether they are no longer a national party or a state party. However, the change which came in 2016 was that initially this criteria used to be for every election. Like if in one election they were not able to fulfill the criteria, they would lose the status of being a national party or a state party. With this new change, the party is given 2 tenures to decide and finally ensure that they are political party of a particular type. In 2016, the ECI announced that such a review would take place after 2 consecutive elections. Therefore, a political party shall retain the recognized party status even if they do not meet the criteria in the next election. However, if they fail to meet the criteria in the subsequent election also, then they would definitely lose their status. As per the latest publication from Election Commission and the subsequent elections, there are 6 national parties, 55 state parties and some 2,500 unrecognized parties. All registered parties contesting elections need to choose a symbol from a list of available symbols offered by the EC. So, first of all, the current status today is that we have 6 national parties, we have 55 state parties and something like 2,597 unrecognized parties. Having said this, we also have to note that all the registered parties who are contesting elections have to choose a symbol. So, there is a list of symbols which is there with the Election Commission, and all the free symbols can then be taken up by the other contesting parties. And in our country, all 28 states of the country along with the Union Territories of Jammu and Kashmir, National Capital Territory of Delhi and Puducherry have elected governments unless President rule is imposed under certain conditions. A registered party is recognized as a national party only if it fulfills any of these three conditions. So as I was saying that for a for a party to be a national political party, it has to fulfill certain conditions. Now what are these conditions which a political party has to fulfill to be assured the status of a national political party? One is that the party wins 2% of seats in the Lok Sabha from at least 3 different states. Another one is that at a general election to Lok Sabha, or for that matter Legislative Assembly, the party polls 6% of votes in any 4 or more states, and in addition it wins 4 Lok Sabha seats. Or the party gets recognition as a state party in 4 states. So these are the criteria for a national party. We have today 6 national parties: Aam Aadmi Party, Bahujan Samaj Party, Bharatiya Janata Party, Communist Party of India, Marxist, Indian National Congress and National People's Party. And then we have state parties. And what are state parties? A registered party is recognized as a state party only if it fulfills any of these criteria, any of these 5 criteria, which are: 1. The party should secure at least 6% of the valid votes polled in an election to the state legislative assembly and win at least 2 seats in the state assembly. Second, a party should secure at least 6% of valid votes polled in an election to Lok Sabha and win at least 1 seat in Lok Sabha. Third, a party should win at least 3% of the total number of seats or a minimum of 3 seats in the Legislative Assembly, whichever is higher. Fourth, a party should win at least 1 seat in the Lok Sabha for every 25 seats or any fraction thereof allotted to that state. And finally, under the liberalized criteria, one more clause that will be eligible for the recognition of a state party is that it secures 8% or more of the total valid votes polled in the state. So these are the criteria for the national parties and the state parties, and the status does keep on changing. So we have understood the criteria for a national party, a state party and the otherwise registered parties. However, what becomes a limitation of a party system, especially the Indian political party system, is that a well knit organization, ideology, internal democracy, democratic leadership and policies and programs are very important features of political parties and democracies. We have somewhere forgotten that these are the aspects which make and give power to a political party. Most political parties in India generally do not satisfy these criteria. The criteria of, again, the rule of law, democracy, egalitarian associationship, all of these are missing. Even though some parties have organizations, all kinds of parties, national, state or unregistered parties, have rallied behind a personality. Most parties in the states are known by their leaders, not by the policies or parties as such. So we have seen, and since independence we have seen that there have been political parties who have gained momentum, who have gained recognition because of their leaders, not because of their ideologies, not because of their manifestos, which is not a true reflection of a federation, of a true polity. What is most important is not just the charisma of the leader but also of the ideology, and that is a limitation of Indian political party system. Also, political parties largely lack internal democracy, in which decisions are not taken in a very democratic way, or an individual or group of individuals within the parties take major decisions. So within a political party also there is a hegemonizing tendency. Only a few are the stalwarts who have the decision making powers. Others are there only for name's sakes. That is not a democratic understanding of a political party. Some parties articulate interests of specific sections of the society rather than of all of the country. In India, weakening of party structure started in the post-Nehruvian era. Factionalism, internal rivalries within the parties have resulted in split and multiplication of parties in India. Nexus between political parties, criminals, corporate sectors and also the corrupt practices constitute a limitation of the party system in India. So therefore, it is very important that for a true democracy to function, the limitations are also taken into consideration on a very serious note. And with this, I would like to sum up today's lecture. Today's lecture we started by understanding the meaning of the term developmental as such, then how the party system of India has undergone major transformations in the few decades. As a legacy of the national movement, the party system in 1947 was characterized by an overwhelming dominance of the Congress party. India was known as Congress and Congress was known as India. The party system then eventually changed. It started the change from 1967 and substantial changes started coming after 1977. And the changes reflected the change in the nature of the socio-economic profile of the Indian polity. The contemporary party system is defined by its multiplicity. A number of national and regional parties have filled in the vacuum created by the withdrawal of Congress from its central position. The regional parties have become more assertive as they have joined the national politics and the allies of national parties. This also has strengthened the federal structure of India. So therefore, this entire transition from single party system to a multi-party system and moving again to a single party system does not reflect the true nature of a democracy. What is most important is we dwell more on the ideologies, manifestos and the rule of law. With this, we put an end to today's lecture. Have a great day. Thank you.